United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath. To defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it's just a show. How long can I contain this anguish and this pain? Knowing that your eyes are blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
Blinded by the light.
Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is Kirk MacKenzie, www.silentnomorepublications.com. And before I get into my conversation with Kirk, I want to share something with you from Keith Broders, who's on my show on a regular basis. Got links up on the Free American to the Constitution Club. He said he was on the front line at the Bundy Ranch, and he says there were several women standing with their brethren against tyranny. They did so voluntarily and took their marching orders from their conscience, not from Sheriff Mack or Stuart Rhodes. These women put their lives on the line and demonstrated far more courage than Stuart Rhodes and Richard Mack, who were safely shielded by hundreds of genuine patriots that stood in front of them. The dynamic duo, however, never missed a photo op or their place in the buffet line. Sheriff Mack's suggestion that everyone should donate money to him so that he could pay public servants to come to the ranch to support the Bundy family was an insult to the hundreds of individuals that paid their own way. There were dozens of men and women that came to the ranch with empty pockets and risked their lives. The idea that we should donate money to Richard Mack so that he could compensate public officials for showing up at the Bundy Ranch was an insult. Keith says, I understand that Sheriff Brad Richards of Elkhart County, Indiana, was paid by Stuart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers organization to make a public appearance. Many of the grandstanding politicians that showed up there were there for the photo opportunity and could care less about the rights of the Constitution and the God-given rights of the people. When Stuart Rhodes heard of a potential drone strike on the Bundy Ranch, he and his loyal followers showed their colors and ran from the scene as fast as they could. Benedict Arnold would have been proud of Stuart's performance at the Bundy Ranch. And that's the opinion of Keith Broders, Constitution Club. Hello, Kirk. How are you?
Well, fine. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. You know, I'm almost of the opinion I say every time I do one of these shows lately here, I can hear Don Henley. I can hear Don Henley's music in the background saying we've met the enemy and he is us. I have made the statement that trying to get patriots to work together for a common cause, which is our liberty, our freedom, is almost like herding cats. What's your opinion, Kirk? Here, what are we doing? What's going on here?
Well, I think that you're right. I think that we're all facing the same enemy, and whether we like each other or not, it doesn't really matter. Or rub each other the wrong way, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that we all point our guns in the same direction, and that's at the enemy. And any dialogue amongst ourselves should be constructive or on the point and not personal.
Well, now I've just been in conversation with a number of my people that I have on my shows, and it's almost impossible here to define who our enemy is. Somebody says, "Well, it's the Jews." Oh, and if you say it's the Jews, well then you're a hater. You're an anti-Semite. If you say it's then somebody else turns around and says, well, it's the Jesuits. It's the Jesuits. It's the Catholic Church. They've been doing this for thousands of years. And then I just a real good friend of mine, somebody that's certainly honest and trying to do the right thing, said, well, Clay, somebody said made the comment the other day that it's the Germans we should be looking out for. And I've kind of made fun of Alex Jones for talking about the Nazis are coming. The Nazis are coming. So, who is the enemy exactly here, and how do we combat that? If we can't define the enemy, how do we combat it?
Well, I think it's actually pretty easy to define, and all we have to do is study history and read statements from U.S. presidents, one after the other, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson, that's probably the one hero I've got, and he told us if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquer. And I think you kind of defined that pretty well in your book, Money Defending Your Prosperity.
And I think, thank you for that. You understood exactly where I'm going with that.
Yes, sir.
It's the consistent across the centuries. There are some international families called banking families. They're not bankers. They're basically pursuing a different view of the world, a new world order, if you will, but essentially a different perspective that I think, to me, is increasingly almost, I hate to describe it that way, it's the way these people think. It's almost Luciferian. I mean, they just really have no feeling about anyone but themselves and their own vision of the world. And they're driving us in a direction where we're going to have the restoration of a new dark age. We're going to have the restoration of totalitarian government likes of which we've never seen. It'll be totally worldwide. It'll be supported by, surveillance and Gestapo troops and, everything that we would have associated with some of the other countries. And I think that there's no doubt about it. I think a lot of this other stuff is just either misunderstanding or misdirection.
Well, they have, let's just say it's Luciferian, and I'm really not. I'm almost hesitant to use that term because I think it's quite possible that the God of the Old Testament was Satan in drag or in disguise, and they just demonized Lucifer for standing up to this kind of tyranny or this kind of enslavement. But that's simply the subject material of a science fiction book I started writing 45 years ago. But the banks, just as Thomas Jefferson warned us, the banks are behind all this. And some of them, my friend that said, somebody said it was the Germans. Well, the Rothschilds were not only Jews, but they were Jews from Germany. So there's some truth in all of this. It's like, you know, whatever you can imagine, you know, it's a lot of it's just real, you know.
Well, I think that one of the things that tends to happen, and I think that the opposition uses it a lot, is built on this idea of inherited and collective guilt, that somehow everybody is guilty for whatever any one of their ancestors might did. That's the inherited guilt part of that, and then there's the collective guilt. And you know, rather than to just say these individuals are a problem, then you start throwing in, well, the Germans did it, or the Jews did it, or you know, whatever. They broaden it out, and it's not really quite correct. And I think that generalization really distorts and corrupts the way people think. I think we just have to isolate it down to individuals and realize that they have, central banking has given them the power to enslave the world. That's just really the way it is. And we have to understand we don't have any money anymore. The only way we get this so-called, it's no longer a dollar. A dollar is measured in silver, but this funny dollar, this counterfeit dollar, is nothing but a bank credit that the banks can create, you know, with a few keystrokes, and the only way it comes into existence is by debt. So if somebody performs labor, and then they're therefore paid in Federal Reserve notes, their labor has just been converted into their debt, their bondage, because somebody had to borrow those Federal Reserve notes. So it is absolutely, you know, when Rothschild said, you know, give me control of the nation's currency, I care not make the laws, he was correct. And we had now seen, one of the latest things I'm working on is that in trying to move forward on solutions at the county levels, even in rural counties and rural states where the values are I think, still there, what we find is the fact that, you know, 30, 40, 50% or more of county budgets and state budgets are basically coming in the form of grants from the federal government, and these governments, state and local governments, accept these grants. Is a massive corruption of the system. And if it continues, it's the destruction of our republic, because they become essentially federal agents. Our representatives are no longer representing our interests, because so much of their money and their pensions and their, you know, incomes, health care, and so forth comes from the federal government, and they therefore become protectors of the federal government. And they just simply will not take the measures that are required to restore our republic. And now, I'm not talking about all of them. I shouldn't generalize myself. Let me just say that my experience is that there's a lot of really good people out there, but in the majority situation, we find that it's hard to pass, you know, county resolutions or legislations, because the majority are, at some level, they don't like to be characterized that way, but the fact of the matter is they're making decisions consistent with the role of being federal agents. And I think that whether you're fighting, you know, chemtrails, you're fighting Common Core education, you're fighting the battle to defend rural America, you know, whatever your issue is, the reality is we all are in common cause to address this fundamental corruption of our system, because that, quote, money just floods through the system and replaces our Republican democratic form of government, if you will. And that money that they receive is actually nothing more than more debt being loaded upon us. You know, on one hand, the money flows in, on the other hand, it's just an increase in the national debt. That increase in bank credits devalues our currency, it devalues our income, it devalues our lifetime savings and work. It just steals wealth from you, basically, and redistributes it, and leaves us all in debt for our own labors. I mean, it's just, you know, when you come to understand that system and the truth of what I'm saying, it just really hits you. And I think that we have got to focus on the county levels within rural America and get those back and restore those to constitutional counties and move from that, and where we can at the state level, state legislative level as well. So that's really been the recent focus I have, and why I have the new website, an additional website. It's called defendruralamerica.com.
All right, I'll get that linked up there. I agree with that. You know, Richard Kelly Hoskins, been on my show many times over the years. He said that the foundation of every civilization is the self-sufficient family farm. I think you can expand that to say the self-sufficient ranches. I mean, our whole country was dotted with self-sufficient farms and ranches, and the small town America sprung up in the middle of all that, so people would have a place to trade and communicate. And some of the most effective movements going on right now, and Sheriff Mack is one of the people responsible for that, trying to get the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association together, and I applaud that. But and here in Texas, the militias have sprung up again. You know, the ADL gives me credit for starting the militias with the Free American magazine. You know, they just don't tell you I did it in the governor's office. They want to make it sound like it was some kind of terrorist operation. And it was the militias that made the difference at the Bundy Ranch. So, you know, we haven't really done anything wrong here. We're kind of moving in the right direction. But I've also told people that the whole the term of Republicans and Democrats is divide and conquer. They want us arguing with each other. And my career spans pissing off 4 presidents now. It didn't make any difference whether they were Republican or Democrat. They were working for the bankers. Matter of fact, I said there's no such thing as the New World Order, because the money changers Jesus ran out of the temple are still with us. They just changed the name of the temple. They call it the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, or the International Monetary Fund.
Well, I think that's actually a pretty good statement. I think that's pretty accurate. If you go back in history and you take a look at the ebbs and flows of, liberty and so forth, you come to realize that the prevailing assault on individual liberty has, over the centuries, come from the same set of people who feel that they own the world, and they are dedicated to controlling it according to their whim. And it eventually hits you. I mean, in the last century, I added it up, and I think recently others have started to look at this as well. Somewhere between 250 to 300 million people were slaughtered, killed in the last century because of these people. They've fomented these wars, everything from the French Revolution forward is essentially different chapters of the same war to bring about their new vision. They are destroying cultures, religions. When they take over countries, they actually start to erase its history. They remove the statutes and replace them with meaningless, statutes and meaningless art, and they're burning the books. And it's happening here in this country. I mean, Western civilization is under assault. It's being erased. All the great things and the contributions we made to the world are being erased. But they've already done this to China. They've done this to India. They've done this to, Europe. They've done this around the world. And they continue to use money to somehow keep, 50% control by giving not equal justice, but unequal justice to keep some faction working against other factions. And eventually we're all going to come to realize is that all of us will be enslaved. Those who think they're getting benefits today, for example, immigrants are getting a big handout when they come to this country. A large number of them will vote essentially for what they think is a great system, and what they're voting for is a communist ideology. At some point, they're going to realize that they're basically voting, and they're going to trap themselves and their children into the same darn system that we're feeling the effects of now. It's really incredible that the peoples of the world could really understand what's going on. Boy, all of us would be up in arms and revolt, and we would throw this group of central bankers out big time, worldwide.
Well, that that is happening in a certain extent. People are becoming aware. The internet has certainly been a boost, but it's a double-edged sword. They use the internet to keep track of us, and they pay their people to come on to try to deceive us. You know, the Israel's Mossad, and you know who is Israel? Well, it was started by the English. It was started by the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds were Germans. You know, so who does it? Well, they got the control of the money, and our founding fathers warned us about that, as Thomas Jefferson's quote. You know, they warned us about that, and it's just today. I tell people when I started the militias, I suggested that the best tactic was to take your weapons home, clean them, load them, shoot the TV, and you'd be better off. They don't call television programming for nothing. That's one of the ways they control us, and it was the mass media that used Edward Bernays to convince women it was okay to smoke, to turn our farmers from growing their own fuel and producing their own fuel, turn them into bootleggers. So this mass media, I mean, this is the reason I started the Free American in the first place, was because I saw the media as being as big a threat as the BATF that murdered all the children in Waco and Oklahoma City, and not to mention thousands under Operation Fast and Furious in Mexico.
Well, you know, I think you're absolutely right on. I like your idea about shooting television sets, because I think here's where we are. We really are. I mean, the path that we're on is our television sets will get bigger, our homes will get, the living spaces will continue to get smaller, our cars would disappear, and our opportunities to travel, you know, as free people will be gone. And we're essentially accepting the substitution of a fake world with all these great effects and anything you want, it's on there for the real world, and for all the lies that come along with it. The incessant propaganda, just every single night, every single show, pushing the agenda. Whether it has to do with, you know, homosexuality, it has to do with you know, the men are terrible. Every show, you know, men, deadbeat dads. I mean, they've been coming after men, you know, deadbeat dads, or you're never there for your children, or all these themes that keep playing over and over and over again, subtly one way or the other. And it's true. And it doesn't matter really almost what show you watch or what channel, it just pervades everything. That's because, you know, all TV programming comes from the Rockefeller Center, you know. So they, you know, they were smart. They used their money to take control of the very critical things that, you know, democracies rely upon, or the people's information. So they've taken control of all information. All the news comes through these news wires, which are controlled by either the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds. And so the news that travels around the world is already controlled at source. They control who contributes the news, they control the angle of the news, and what comes on the wire they don't like, they get rid of it or they change it. You know, that's been documented in the book Bias. So, you know, you do have to really turn that off, turn on. What I've done is I just changed my whole time. I just basically I turned off the TV set more, and what I've done is I've turned on email and so forth. I subscribe to all kinds of people, and as a result, I get quite a bit more accurate, you know, view of what really is going on in the world. And I think others need to do the same thing. But I like your idea about shooting the TV set. You're absolutely right on.
You know, the other deception, I mean, we again, they've turned us against each other, and the more people are waking up today to realize that we're really being herded into a police state. They've turned our cities into ghettos. You don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling when you see a cop behind you now. because you got so many laws, you don't know, you could be breaking one just by sitting there in your car, talking on the telephone. Whoa, you know that's illegal now in California. And it started a long time ago. I'd like to get your input on this. You talk about rural America, and I mentioned that anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers and ranchers first. The Bundys would be a good example. And they don't want you being able to feed yourself. And second, they go after the intelligentsia, anybody that's smart enough to figure it out. And third, they go after the veterans and law enforcement that might still be loyal to the old regime. That would be us oath keepers, not the organization, but those of us that realize we took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And this is they went after the farmers almost 100 years ago. As soon as the Federal Reserve took over, they took away our #1 cash crop and turned it into a drug. Hemp was used for 10,000 products. It was on the back of the 1914 $10 bill. We could, the Encyclopedia Britannica was printed on hemp paper for 100 years. Our Constitution printed on hemp paper. Our flag made out of hemp. And they stole it from us. And it's also a rotational crop. The farmers plant the hemp one year, and the next year the soil has been restored, and you can grow healthy food. You don't have to grow genetically modified crap. And just like they did to our farmers and made them into bootleggers, they turned hemp into a drug. I mean, I've smoked marijuana for 45 years. I was glad to see medical marijuana being legalized, so you can actually smoke it for 10 years if you bribe a doctor, if you pretend to be sick. And I couldn't even qualify for marijuana in a state that had legalized it because I'm too healthy. I said, the reason I'm that healthy is I've been smoking it for 45 years. But what's happening in Colorado right now is really a window of opportunity for Americans to see all of the benefits for abolishing a law against a plant that God gave us in the Bible called a plant of renown. Is that, are we making headway? But you've got these conservatives out there that are saying, oh, well, it's bad. You know, somebody was smoking marijuana when they killed themselves. Somebody did this, somebody did that. Again, trying to demonize something that's now legal in at least one state among 49, among 50, yeah. What about that? What's your opinion, sir?
I think there's bigger issues that are trying to legalize marijuana.
Okay. All right. How do we do this?
I think the thing we really have to get back to is what's really important here, and I think that the Karl Marx understood this, you know, from the opposite side of the fence. Basically, you have to, their understanding, liberty is intimately tied with property ownership. In fact, in the bigger context, you know, natural resources. It is the means of production. And if you lose the means of production, you are basically returned to being a serf. You know, it's the feudalism system reborn, if you will, the enslavement system. Somebody is the landlord and you're the peasant. I think that they have been effective using the banks. You know, China, for example, was a dirt poor country. Russia was a dirt poor country. And contrary to what we've been told, the way that those countries were allowed to grow as communist countries was because the banks, the Rockefellers, and so forth, were financing them and shipping our technologies over as fast as we invented them. I mean, even while we were inventing uranium and neutron and the atomic weapons, all of that information is being shipped to Russia, to communist countries, and financing them. And so simultaneously, on the one hand, growing those industries there on our technologies, allowing them to violate patents, allowing them to steal all the information. They were attacking the industries at home, excessive regulations and what have you, to the point that we've lost our manufacturing. Shoe production used to have, and hats and automobiles and all these things, even guitars, right?
Yeah, and our flags are made in China, so
the last remaining thing that gives us some degree of independence and is the backbone of the security is the fact that we are one of the richest nations in the world in terms of natural resources. Over $160 trillion. And you look at the forests and the water and the minerals and all the fish and animals and game and all that kind of thing. We are a wealthy nation. And they're now going after the last productive sector of our economy. And I think that Americans of all colors, all stripes, should be very concerned about this. It's going to impact our independence. It'll impact our security. It's going to impact the quality of our food. I mean, who wants to become increasingly dependent on food from China? Well, we know they stick chalk in the food and all kinds of things, and they, have no compunction over there anyway. Story after story, where even their own restaurants will sell rat meat and claim it's chicken. I mean, who wants that? That's the direction it's going, and I think that for me, the rural America is not only where we can fight, it is the last line. And if we allow this to go, not only does the American dream go down, and the idea is liberty here in the United States, it happens worldwide. We were the primary. Western civilization was progressing forward on the idea of freedom and liberty, and produced the greatest prosperity in the history. I mean, all the things that we've done, electricity and computers and indoor plumbing and cheap home construction and plastics and LCDs and you name it, because people were free to do what they wanted to do. And if we go down, the world will be essentially revert to a dark age, and it will be in that way for centuries. And I believe that the only way it will actually ever have any opportunity to emerge out of that, if it ever does, will be through the destruction of technology, because technology will be used to absolutely control us, and they will do that. And so I hope that people stand up now. I hope that they hear what I'm saying and they understand that there is this line, and it is in rural America, and this is the battle. And so the issue is, okay, what can we fight? Where will people stand up to fight for? And in rural America, the bottom line is, what is the biggest threat to this is this neo-environmentalism, where environmentalism, I'm an environmentalist. I do believe in being a good steward of land. It comes from our Christian heritage. But it's been taken over and perverted into a kind of a communist ideology and political movement, an extension of the World Bankers' philosophies. And it's getting traction because people believe it's still environmentalism. It's not. And they haven't come to the realization that what this is doing is absolutely destroying. It's destroying our energy resources, destroying our forests. Conservative estimates indicate that the forest fires, which are unprecedented in nature, which we know are destroying acres, millions of acres, areas as big as states are being burned out in single forest fires, and so hot that they sterilize the earth. And the animals, over 100 million animals, have been essentially cremated alive. I mean, what worse way to die? The Bambis are dying, bears are dying, owls are being burned alive, lions, and all the things, wolves, all these animals that we think we're trying to save are being destroyed. The air quality is being killed by these fine particulate matters emitted, much more than any emissions from cars. The water quality goes down because of sediments. Now without the trees there, the water has come washing the dirt down, erode the dirt, soil, pushed all that into the creeks and the streams and the rivers. And our farmlands are being allowed to dry up and turn to desert. I mean, I just, we're at a point now where, people abroad, and particularly in urban America, are still buying all this, the environmentalism stuff, doing what they think is good, in fact not realizing the destruction that it's causing. And so I think that there has to be, in my opinion, a fight against this neo-environmentalism that has to do, one, educating and reaching out to urban Americans, people of all political persuasions, all races, all geographies, show them what's really, truly going on. At the same time, they have to take action at county levels to organize an effective response, take control of those county governments once again, restore them to being actual representatives or interests, use the county budgets towards that purpose, and county by county and state by state, climb our way back to the dream and restoring that. That's the path that I see.
You still there? I just lost you.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I just stopped talking.
Oh, okay. Everything that you just talked about, everything that you just mentioned, is touched on in a film that I just put up on my website, freeamerican.com, my Facebook site, freeamerican69 on Facebook, and YouTube, freeamerican69. And it's all contained in a film. It's an extension of a film that I made almost 20 years ago called Chemtrails. This one is called What in the World Are They Spraying? And they've really done an excellent job of interviewing the scientists that are pointing out that what they are spraying on us, aluminum and barium, is poisoning us, poisoning our water. And by the way, aluminum is created, and it has a byproduct that they're pouring in our water. It's called fluoride. Fluoride is shown to reduce intelligence levels. It's making people more apathetic, and it's contributing to Alzheimer's and dementia. It's also attacking our trees and making our trees more susceptible to forest fires. You just mentioned that. So this is really this spraying, which we got no control over, we got no say over, and nobody ever, in the film you'll see legislators in the halls of Congress running from the cameras when they're asked about geoengineering. I think this is an attack on our farmlands. It's an attack on our health. The doctors and the pharmaceutical companies don't make any money off of you if you're healthy. They don't make a dime off of me. And what Obamacare is simply another way to funnel money into these Rockefeller-created American Medical Association and pharmaceutical industries. Your opinion on that, sir?
Well, I think, again, I'm going to get back to you. I think that, for me anyway, first of all, let me say that I recognize the fact that everybody has different hot buttons, and our movement has no one unified approach, which is unfortunate, I think, in some regards. But I think, and so I recognize that people have differences. So some it'll be common core education and so forth. So some it's going to be chemtrails, and some it's going to be fluoride and healthcare and so forth. I think that all of those different factions should realize that the solution is to take control of local government. Because as long as we just keep talking about, 500 different problems, we're not going to win. We really have got, if we're going to talk about 500 problems, let's talk about one common solution that we can grab onto, and that is taking control of local government. And I would like to encourage everybody to do that. Now, in terms of prioritizing those 500 different problems, I sent out a video called How to Take Our Country Back several years ago, which got over 60,000 views, I think, when I finally took it down. And basically, it says exactly what I'm saying to you now. You've got to know what's really, you have to understand history to know what's really, truly fundamental. You know, they built a skyscraper with, 200 floors. If you fight them on the 200th floor, even if you win, you've left 199 floors in place. If you blow up the basement, the structure, the whole damn thing comes down. So, all 500 Easters, although they're equally important to individuals, in the scheme of things are not equal in importance and strategic importance. So for me, the issue is to focus on the things. Go after, understand the big global picture. Go find the local fights where people actually stand up and fight and will push back. You've got to find that. Where will people be mobilized? They'll be mobilized. They're already mobilized on the issues that concern them. And in fact, I think the Bundy situation verifies what I've been saying, because it is rural America where people will stand up and fight back. And we have not only the Bundys, we have the Haigs, and we have a whole bunch of them. This is where the battleground is, in my opinion. And I would prefer to focus, all of my time on trying to convince people to go in that direction. Now, I've released recently 2 videos that are critically important. One is called Jurisdiction Can Save Rural America. That's on YouTube. And the second one is called The Unconstitutional United States. There are 3 different definitions of the United States, and they mean 3 entirely different things. And you have to understand that when the word United States law is used, there are completely 2 radically different views. There is a United States that we understand, and then there's a, quote, United States that has been legitimized by the Supreme Court to act completely outside of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It is critical information that everyone needs to understand. So I hope that you'll put the links up for that as well and encourage people to watch those.
Yeah, send those to me, and I will add them to this show. It's I've touched on this. I've had some of my guests touch on this. We have 3 definitions of the Constitution, don't we? Or 3 different constitutions that somebody put out. Is that what you're referring to?
No, we have 3 different definitions of the word United States.
United States, okay.
And I think that people have to understand that the Supreme Court has legitimized the idea that the federal government is unconstrained by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights within what I'll call the federal zone. The zone that they have concluded is where the federal government is the supreme power. And that federal zone is devouring the rest of our country now over the lands and the people. And it's absolute corruption. This is one of those fundamental corruptions of the system. It's just like when the Supreme Court also said that common law doesn't belong to the people, it belongs to we, the Supreme Court, and the government. We make the laws, which reversed everything since the Magna Carta. I mean, so there's some real cornerstone pieces that I think the more people who understand those and help to communicate to others those problems and get people to read and watch these things, the more likely we are to succeed in our efforts.
I've had some people on my show that have been talking about the common law or setting up common law grand juries, things like that, and the mainstream is putting that down. The courts are putting that down. I mean, if I see one of the problems we got is there is no separation of powers. If everybody in the Senate, anybody in the House, anybody in the judicial, the executive branch, or if they're all lawyers, they're basically working for a foreign country. titles of Esquire. And the Bar Association is sitting over there probably right next door to the Bank of England, isn't it?
I think that in trying to understand what the judicial system has been doing, you cannot read a Supreme Court decision if you don't understand what the meaning of the United States means. You know, and I think that this is where I think a lot of people are tripping out. And the issues of standing and jurisdiction are intimately tied to this federal zone. It's vital information that people understand why some of these decisions that don't make sense, or why people who want to sue don't have standing. It really is vitally important to understand, because this is really a fundamental corruption.
Okay, I have both of those. Jurisdiction can save rural America, and the unconstitutional United States. I have those, both of those, up on my website now, or will have in 5 or so minutes. And it's how do we put this into effect locally? How do we do this in our county? How do we instruct people on what to do, how to say this, and they're going to set up. They're going to set up counter COINTEL operations to prevent us from getting any power, aren't they?
I think it's a very difficult thing to do that in rural counties. You know, if you take a look at where the power base has been built here in the United States and around the world, it's the ports. They take control of the ports. Just like Rockefeller took control of the Port Authority in New York and used that to build the United Nations. It's the ports. You know, if you look at the United States and you look at all the parts in the middle, whether you went to Denver, Salt Lake, Boise, you know, whatever, you know, you have very modest cities. And in fact, if you go into the actual, go outside of the capitals to the countryside, you're talking about very modest towns and so forth. That's where all the money comes from, the real value comes from. But where does all that value get concentrated? Then you take a look at New York City, and you take a look at Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and Seattle, and the inland port of Chicago. You know, everywhere those high rises go, the new towers of Babylon, where they don't produce anything. They don't produce cars. They don't produce computers. They don't produce a darn thing. They don't invent a darn thing. You can see in front of your very eyes how the power and the money flows. It flows from the interior to the external to the ports. And so I again come back to the fact that I think the battle, we don't control the ports. We really need to focus on the interior parts of our country. Is where we're going to have to fight this battle and win. And I think that the corruption in this process is that the Supreme Court, another fundamental corruption, ruled that it was somehow unfair for counties to keep their property taxes because one county would be richer than another, and therefore we now have a situation where your property taxes no longer go to your county, they go to the state. They're just another form of state tax. And so your counties are destitute, and in trying to figure out how to fund things, they're basically going around going for grants. You know, the grant writer is now one of the most important people in the county. Essentially, what that system has created is a process whereby our representatives, using their offices, are selling those offices to the highest bidder. So I think that people here that I've been working with have really seen that firsthand with the frogs and toads issue, seeing that these counties are not representing our interests, that they in fact are representing the money. The first call they make on anything is to the federal agent. This is really, again, that should sit in the fan now, and I think it should do so across the country. And I think that's really, I think if we can take back our counties and get them constitutional, everybody focus on your county and link those constitutional counties one to the other. I think we have now a basis to actually get some traction and fight back. And the first thing we go fight back for is to retain our natural resources and all those farmers and ranchers and property rights and water and energy and trees and, you know, all of those things that are basically not just important to the local communities, but they're important to our national security.
Colorado's made some progress in my eyes, I believe, but at the same time, I've talked to people about starting their own farms or growing food in their backyard, and I learned that you can't even put a rain barrel under your house and catch the rainwater off your roof right now. Suddenly they've made that illegal, and in many
can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
You think this is the United States? The one country we were born in? I don't think so.
You know, it fell on your roof, and you know, when I had property in New Mexico, we had a cistern that had been there for 50 years. I mean, we caught the water off when it rained, and bathed in it later. So, and they're also, I've told people, look, if you grow your own food and put solar and wind back on your house. I mean, every farm across America, every ranch across America had a windmill. And if you grow your own food and generate your own energy, you don't need the government or the banks for much. Again, self-sufficient.
What I understand is why they've actually gone and attacked the 20 kilowatt water-cooled USA produced generators, because that's exactly what they did, is they gave people self-sufficiency, and they do not like self-sufficiency.
They do not. They do not. I mean, that's my whole plan for the what I call the Liberty Village concept was about being self-sufficient, and you know, that may have been the reason my accident was arranged here. Because they really don't want that getting started. And I've told people, you can do this in your back. You don't need a farm. You don't need a ranch. If you talk with your neighbors in your block and say, hey, look, we're going to initiate this Liberty Village concept. We're going to do the Liberty Village concept. You want to take part, strictly voluntarily. And if your whole block got together, worked together, built their own windmills, created their own solar panels, and planted food, not grass, in their backyards, you would your whole block would be totally self-sufficient. Your whole block would be getting a check from your power company, and I think they're scared to death of that taking hold, aren't they?
Well, they extend that to the county. I'm a big advocate. The counties should go off grid. You know, counties are, you know, have enough of a size to actually probably make that economically viable. I think that they can generate their own. I say take control of your energy, take control of water, and take control of your communications. I think that they should, in my opinion, implement, for example, a secure and encrypted method for people within the county to communicate to the internet anonymously. They can do that. They should do that. I'd like to see them do that. So there's a lot of things that can be done once you have control of your county. And I do agree with you that those things can be made to make the county not only self-sufficient but prosperous. For example, take over the dams. Control the dams. Dams are probably the cleanest source, the cheapest source of energy around. Use what you need within your local county at low cost, and then sell the balance to the grid at a very high value. I mean, rural America controls all the energy in this country. You know, they just need to take control of that. So there's so much that can be done, but it starts with taking control.
Well, one of the links that I have on my site is for the Constitution Club. Keith Broders was on my show. He's created websites for every county to do exactly what you are suggesting here. It's just a matter of us working together. It's just a matter of using. We have the same concept. We have the same values. We have the same goals. And even President Obama put out a executive order. I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but talking about the rural counties being so valuable that the federal government needed to get involved. I said that's the only part of his executive order I don't agree with. I think the federal government ought to be kept out of the counties, but the counties are valuable, the farms are valuable, the resources are valuable. We certainly don't need the BLM coming in and killing off a rancher's cattle so they could build a solar farm. And, you know, even that, I've said that that's the government's idea of greening America is to lease the top of that mountain over there to a Chinese company so they can come in and build windmills, that so they can create all this power and pipe it down to the electric company so the electric company can charge you more money for green energy. Why not just do it right there at your house? Why not dispense with the all of the power lines? And that's a Rockefeller. Competition is a sin. This is why Tesla died a poor man after inventing electricity and wanting to give it away to Americans for free. It was Morgan that said, well, where do we put the meter? How do we meter this? How do we charge for it? How do we make money off of it?
Clayton, if I can, I want to, before we run out of time, I want to say that I think that recent events to me have encouraged, because 3 or 4 years ago I laid down a strategy based upon my observations of the world, and part of that was focusing on rural America, and part of that was for people to come together, different organizations to work together. I think the Bundy Ranch, to me, is the symbol of the kind of thing that the positive things that are in fact happening, because whether everybody loves each other or whether they like each other doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. We're all on the same side of this thing, and I think what's happening is that the various people are finding their place. There's a place for the Oath Keepers, there's a place for Richard Mack, there's a place for Defend Rural America, there's a place for Chemtrails, there's a place for Common Core education. If we work together, we will be unbeatable. And so my suggestion to everybody, again, is everybody has a different issue at this point in time, grab onto the same strategy. And within your counties, have the different groups, the different leaders come together on an equal basis, a roundtable dialogue, to work together to restore constitutional counties, and I think we'll begin to turn things around big time.
I'd like to have you send me that. Probably on Skype is the best way. Just a short consensus of what we can do in the county. Just exactly what you said. Take back the energy, you know, can grow our own food. And they're starting to do that. This issue of the Free American, the May issue of the Free American, I've got a couple of stories on there. One about the U.S. Navy putting the technology to work to run their warships, to run their ships on the water they're sitting on, converting the water to hydrogen, and the waste product is water. And the other thing is a company called Bright Farms is operating in 6 states, and they are putting greenhouses on the roof of their supermarkets. They're working with supermarket chains so that they're producing non-GMO foods, heritage foods, and when you go into the store to buy it, it was picked that day. It was offered to you for sale right out of the ground. No pesticides, no GMO. So that is, and they're setting up in county by county. They're setting up the distribution points or where the greenhouses to grow our own food. We're not paying. They're not having to pay the gasoline, the Rockefellers, for gasoline to truck it in from.
The news.
Hold on.
That mainstream media won't tell you. Are you frustrated with your elected politicians? Get the news behind the news at truthradio.com. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs on demand. Listen when you want to. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out there. All you have to do is open your mind and listen.
All right. My guest today is Kirk MacKenzie. Got some excellent suggestions here, excellent ideas. Kirk, I am on for 2 hours, but if you've got business that you need to take care of, I certainly understand that.
Yeah, thank you. I understood that we would be doing this for an hour today. I hadn't planned for 2 hours, Clayton. I'm sorry about that.
That's no problem, sir. No problem at all.
But I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate everything that you're doing to try and get the word out and help people get an alternative source of information, which I think I'm in total agreement with you. And I think the kind of work that you and others do to spread the information and get the truth out there is so vital. It's yet another part of the whole thing. I mean, if you this is, I guess, what is encouraging me, Clayton, is that if you look at the total effort, we're all basically fighting our role in this. And I think as soon as we realize that all those roles really come together, work together towards a common purpose, it's encouraging. And I feel that, you've seen what's happened in the 5 western states, or 9 western states that came together. Well, that wasn't by accident. That follows up on some presentations I gave last year. So I'm kind of believing that others are understanding the fight is in rural America, focusing more of their effort there where we can win. And I'm encouraged to feel that the movement is to defend rural America by whatever name their organizations are. That Defend Rural America movement, to me, is looking self-sustaining, and not only self-sustaining, but I think it's going to grow of its own momentum. And I'm very encouraged, and I hope that your listeners can be encouraged that things, as difficult as they are, there is a ray of light out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. I'll have you back on anytime. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. All right, that was Kirk MacKenzie. And again, he is doing some good work there, and he's got great ideas. What you need to understand, folks, is that doing what I do here, I touch on a lot of different subjects. I have people on my show that have different views, and I think everybody's view, depending on where they come from, is valid. I've told you that I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what color you are. I've been in Jamaica. I've been the only white guy in a theater watching a movie there, and felt perfectly comfortable. I've been in the jungles of Belize and Guatemala and never felt a moment's discomfort about being there. Not a racist. I don't even hate the Jews, as Colonel Riley accused me of. I had 2 of my guests that were with Operation Spring that were Jewish. We got along fine. One of my favorite people, one of the guys that I backed and helped and worked with, was named Jack Hara, and he wrote Emperor Wears No Clothes. Did a wonderful job on that, and that helped to get the marijuana legalized, semi-legalized, in 20 states, medical marijuana. But I won't go along with that. I mean, that's not the final answer. The final answer is, I mean, why should we pay the medical industry, the doctors who are the real drug dealers in this country, who are responsible for more deaths far more deaths than marijuana ever was responsible for. Nobody's ever died of smoking marijuana, using marijuana, regardless of what some of your conservative websites say. Oh, well, there was a guy in Indiana that jumped off a building after eating a marijuana cookie. yeah, and there's people killed walking across the street because they were too dumb to look both ways. I don't know about that. Sometimes again, I think that we're many times our own worst enemy. Our own worst enemy. Now, I think what I want to do today, let me try this. Let me switch speakers here. And I did a film 20 years ago called Chemtrails, the video. It's still for sale, still up there. But since I woke people up to what's happening above you, and this is interesting too. This is interesting too. While I was doing that, I went to Phoenix. I was in Phoenix and visiting a friend of mine, and I went there and I had the video, Chemtrails. I had the cover of my Free American magazine, had the chemtrails on it, story about the chemtrails. And we got up early that morning, and they started spraying about 6 o'clock in the morning or before. And while I was setting up at the flea market there in Phoenix, they were spraying so heavy that by noon, the clear blue sky in Arizona was occluded. There was a cloud cover over Phoenix. While this was happening, I was like a carnival barker. I was sitting back. All right, hey, now, folks, here's the latest issue of the Free American. Here's my video, Chemtrails, and this is all about what's happening right now. Right now, look up, ladies and gentlemen, look up. And nobody would look up. Nobody. I couldn't believe it. It was just blew me away. Now today, we're getting a little bit more research. Some of the people did look up. Some of the people woke up. And this film that I've got up on the Free American website, freeamerican.com, on Free American 69 on Facebook, it tells you what's happening from the viewpoint of scientists, from environmentalists, from a lot of different people. And here's a gentleman by the name of Stuart Howe. I want to share this with you, because you really need to know. G. Edward Griffin put this up. He's the one that exposed the Jekyll Island. This is put out by Truth Media. And Michael J. Murphy was involved in this. Paul Wittenberger did this. It's well, I don't think it's an original idea by Michael J. Murphy, because I had it 20 years before him. Paul Wittenberger directed this. Congratulations, Paul. You did a hell of a job. The filmmakers are encouraging everyone to make copies and hand it out for free in support of their vision of making this issue known to all.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
And they say the unusual-looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails.
people say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail. So what I look up there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails.
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
And it's interesting, Dale and Christina, this is of interest not just in this country, but European countries and frankly all over the world. A lot of folks interested in it.
Well, Dave, you mentioned that climatologists and others who study the atmosphere believe that they'd be able to surely spot any kind of signs of an ominous plot.
Our journey started in San Diego, California, where thousands of scientists, engineers, policymakers, and journalists gathered for the American Association for the Advancement of Science Conference. One of the topics was the artificial manipulation of the Earth's climate, also called geoengineering. During the meeting, scientists spoke about the plausibility of implementing geoengineering campaigns throughout the world under the guise of preventing global warming. One widely accepted theory was to block the sun by spraying something into the atmosphere. When they were asked about existing aerosol programs, they stated clearly that no such programs have ever been implemented. But strangely, these proposals sounded exactly like what people around the world are claiming is already happening.
When I found out that the American Association for the Advancement of Science was going to be held down here and the main body of topics would be on geoengineering, I had to come. I had to be in on this. I had to hear what these top climate change scientists had to say.
And that's the other question about chemtrails and whether geoengineering is being deployed right now without our knowledge. I don't have any personal insight into that, other than to say that I worked in government at pretty high levels in the White House and at state government. I'm personally skeptical of that. But obviously you never know what you don't know.
Chemtrails. On the internet, they are cited as proof of the government creating clouds to combat global warming.
They claim the American government, with the secret approval of the national government, is covertly using jet aircraft to spray population centres with aluminium, with barium, and with strontium so as to reduce people's humidity and reduce the global population.
I'm always a little bit suspicious because the government doesn't seem that capable to do something on such a large scale.
That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even italicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
What happens here, military jets, some come out of Key West Air Force Base, and they move off into the atmosphere, and they drop mylar strips. Some could be a little wider, some are small glass fibers that are coated in aluminum. And what the Air Force does is they take their military jets and they dump these out of the aircraft, they fall into the atmosphere, and some take as much to a day to fall down.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic, little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum.
It's a nuisance to you and I to determine what's real and what's not, but it looks like it is a life-saving operation there for the military.
The apparent motive behind this conspiracy theory is one world government.
Order, I cannot hear.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the House that both my ministry and my colleague, the Minister of Health, who have received correspondence on this issue, that this conspiracy theory does not have an iota of truth, and that the trails observed from aircraft simply come from jet engines.
Number 9.
Order. And I think what an appalling example it is of the new Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the Labour Party that she's spreading conspiracy theories about the United States government.
The House has said sufficient. It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
We take geoengineering to mean deliberate, large-scale intervention in Earth's system.
There are a variety of schemes that have been discussed for geoengineering. A classic example is injecting reflecting particles into Earth orbit.
Nevertheless, there might be some good reasons to think about aluminum. It turns out, first of all, there's been a lot of work on the environmental consequences of aluminum in the stratosphere. The big deal really is that aluminum has 4 times the volumetric rate of forcing for small particles as does sulfur. And that means you have 4 times less surface area for the same radio forcing, and this is a much bigger deal, you'd have roughly 16 times less the coagulation rate, and that's the thing that really drives removal. So you could get away, we think, with much smaller mass flow.
So that's why we see things like in the used aircraft patent from '89, they talk about aluminum. And that's why we're seeing in the surface water samples aluminum. And here's David Keith saying that aluminum has 4 times the reflective volume surface area. So they'd like us to think that we're talking about sulfur, but here they slipped up and let it out that aluminum is 4 times better to achieving their ends, and it sounds like it's when they don't want us to know the effects of it.
The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying alumina vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done. They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we can do it. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and nominal. So I've told you there's cheap to deliver materials in the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look. And that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and that the side effects are harder to manage, and that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the management. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question, how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, and that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids.
Numerous air quality studies, including from CARB, California Air Quality Resource Board, have named submicron-sized particulates as being particularly harmful.
This is Dane Wigington. He's a solar expert speaking at a meeting in California.
For human respiration. Through all the discussions today, I have not heard any mention of this fallout, and has this been studied, and also the effects of a highly reactive metal like aluminum on toxifying soils and waters?
The question is, what would be the effects of these materials on human health if they came down into the stratosphere, in particular small particles in aluminum?
So the collaborators of mine working on the aerosol scheme are actually folks from Carnegie Mellon who focused on human health impacts. And while we haven't published it, that was the very first thing we did, was do the order of magnitude calculation in level pencil and paper, but with an expert on human health impacts about whether there could be an issue. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously. But if you're just thinking about the sheer number of particles and the human health impact of small particles, the answer is, well, we haven't published it. That was the first thing we looked at with some of the leading experts who do epidemiological research on human health impacts, and it's not even close to being an issue.
So 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere.
Let me clarify. So 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere would have no human health impact?
Let me be more careful here. To separate out the toxicological, so the alumina we've only begun to research and published nothing.
Well, I did a little bit more research into that. What is a byproduct, a waste product of the creation of aluminum? It's called fluoride. Oh, what do you do with fluoride? Well, you lie to the American people, tell them it helps tooth decay, and dump it in their water. And then it creates more. It mixes with the aluminum in the air, and it creates Alzheimer's, it creates dementia. It lowers the IQ. just to mention a few. And you can do research on there. Put into your Google search engine aluminum and fluoride.
Alumina, we've only begun to research and published nothing.
How long have they been dumping fluoride in your water?
They looked at him and they said, so you're telling me that spraying 10 to 20 megatons of aluminum, as you said, would have no human health effects? He took a deep breath and he swallowed and he said, let me be more careful here.
We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at.
And that, for me, that was the whole main point of what is going to be coming out to the public. It's the damaging effects of aluminum that are being found around the world in massive amounts. Here's David Keith confronted on this very issue, and he looked, at that point like they just let the cat out of the bag.
We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at.
They're proceeding because they have an agenda that's separate from trying to thwart this crisis of global warming. There's obviously several other objectives, whether it's depopulation, control, weapons aspects, communications aspects, all kinds of things, wild cards that we know nothing about. We don't really know, and I'm not going to attempt to speculate on exactly what the agendas are, but we can see clearly the agendas are not benefiting mankind. It's benefiting the agenda of the elite.
And so I think the question is, how do you draw the line between some activity that is allowed and doesn't need global governance and activities that do require global governance?
Dr. John Holdren has agreed to serve as Assistant to the President for Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I look forward to his wise counsel in the years ahead.
My personal opinion is that we have to keep geoengineering on the table. We have to look at it very carefully because we might get desperate enough to want to use it.
So what would we do if in year 2040 or 2060 there's a severe climate crisis, say widespread famines or Greenland sliding suddenly into the ocean? That the only plausible way in which we could start the Earth cooling this century is to directly intervene in the climate system, say by putting particles in the stratosphere.
We do stuff in the stratosphere all the time, of course, and so it's not as though the stratosphere is absolutely pristine. But you don't want to have people going off and doing things that involve large radiative forcings or go on for extended periods, or for that matter provide lots of reactive surfaces that could result in significant ozone destruction.
Maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make money, or maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm engaging in scientific research and trying to understand cloud physics, or maybe I'm putting this particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make it rain locally.
Or maybe we're putting those particles in the atmosphere because we want to keep people sick. We want to create cancer. We want to fund the medical industry. We want to fund the pharmaceutical industry. And we want to reduce the population by 90%.
To seed a cloud and get more snow on our ski slopes. And this obviously raises all kinds of questions. It's hugely risky. It will likely negatively impact some people, but we might find ourselves in a situation where those risks seem worth taking.
One of the things that really shocked me was in one of the breakouts they had the benefits of these programs and then the risks. Now the benefits, the one thing that was stated was the just cooling the planet. Some of the risks were ozone depletion, droughts in Africa and Asia.
I got to tell you, I came away from this experience after listening to these scientists for 4 days of symposiums, really concerned because it's clear now that they are justifying, rationalizing, and looking to legitimize some really, really horrible impacts, further impacts on our environment. And they're basically formulating the sales strategy and the implementation and oversight strategy and the funding strategy.
After San Diego, I was shocked by the programs that had been proposed. I decided to write about it.
Hold on here, we've lost something. We've lost the Blog Talk Radio. Alright, bringing it back up.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important...
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Alright, sorry about that, folks. We got disconnected there for just a moment. And nobody told me, David, Rabbi. Alright, we're back on now. And we're listening to What in the World Are They Spraying? This is a documentary, and I don't think we missed much, but I will go back just a fraction here.
And oversight strategy and the funding strategy.
After San Diego, I was shocked by the programs that had been proposed. I decided to write about it. That night when I finished, I sent the article to an online publication with my email address attached. When I woke up the next morning, my inbox was flooded with responses from around the world. Why? Because I had just broken a story on aluminum in geoengineering models, which I had no clue at the time that very few people knew about. Now this metal, aluminum, is being found in massive quantities way above normal levels all over in rain, in soil, and in snow. After that, the calls started pouring in from people who were desperate for someone to investigate. That was the fuel that started the film. Before we started filming, we had the opportunity to sit down with one of our favorite authors and documentarians, G. Edward Griffin, to find out what he knew about the subject. I'd like to talk for a minute about an issue that's getting more and more attention. That's the issue which scientifically is called stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, also called the chemtrail issue.
I'm very aware of the chemtrail versus contrail controversy. As far as I'm concerned, it's an open and shut case. I have been watching the development of jet travel from its very beginning. I used to live near the Los Angeles airport. Remember when the first jets came in and landed? Man, they made a big noise. We never heard a noise like that before. And we used to go down and sit at the end of the runway and watch these jets come in and take off because it was a novel experience. I've been watching jets all my life, and I know about jet contrails. I've watched them. They're vaporized moisture, ice crystals, and they get out there in the atmosphere, and then they effervesce and evaporate and then disappear, and you can see them. Plane moves along, and the little white trail follows right behind it, and usually about 10 or 20 lengths of the plane, or thereabouts, and then it's gone. And you can still see them that way, by the way, once in a while. So there goes a contrail. These other things we're talking about are not at all the same phenomena at all. These planes go by, and they billow out this white smoke, and it covers the sky from horizon to horizon. It doesn't dissipate at all. And they crisscross each other. And you see this thing cover the sky and turn it milky, and then people start having trouble breathing, and then you hear stories about the aluminum and barium deposits that they're picking up in the residue. And you put it all together, and I don't see how anybody who's got their eyes open and their mind open can come to any other conclusion but that somebody is spending a lot of money and effort to spray the planet. The question is, why? I have my own theories, but I hope that there will be some good investigative reporters go out there and get us the answer. I know that whenever it's finally discovered, and it will be, the people who are doing it will undoubtedly say, oh, well, we did it for you folks. It's for the greater good of the greater number. It's for the society. It's probably to prevent global warming. Or maybe it's to inoculate people against some kind of a dreaded biological attack. We can't go around shooting everybody in the arm, but we can spray them and save their lives. You see how good we are? We're doing it for the benefit of society. I know...
This is G. Edward Griffin that's talking right now. And the filmmakers here encourage you to do exactly what I've done here. Put it up on your Facebook. Put it up on your website. Tell other people about it. I believe that they are doing this to thin the population, to keep you sick, to create cancers, and to create dementia, to lower your IQ. That's what drinking fluoride does for you, folks. And that's pretty obvious because so many of you out there fall victim to this. Oh, Clay's a racist. Clay, he's anti-Semitic. He hates Jews. No, I don't. I care about the American people. I care about the safety of your children. I care about your right to bear arms. I care about government attacks on you. And I helped start the militia. I'm proud that I did that because it was the militias that, from all different states, that made a difference at the Bundy Ranch. Let's go back to G. Edward Griffin.
Well, they're going to, whatever it is, they're going to say it was for your good, for mine.
Think if we had the ability to steer hurricanes, and the hurricane was going to slam into New Orleans. And let's say you could steer it so it would hit Mississippi instead, where for 100 that means I would be willing to more or less kill 18 Mississippians to save 1,800 New Orleanians. And if you do that knowingly, are you murdering those 100 people? And there's all kinds of equity issues there. Now, also, we might be wrong about our steering, and if we didn't do the research right, maybe our steering would intensify Katrina and even kill more people in New Orleans. And so this question of how do you develop the confidence to know that your intervention will reduce overall damage, and then how do you deal with the understanding that you might be damaging some people who wouldn't have been damaged before while saving people overall?
The spraying appears to be mostly in NATO countries. I've seen it here in the United States, I've seen it in England, I've seen it in Scotland, I've seen it in Canada, and I've had reports from people who live in France. There's a grouping, there's a political grouping here of some sort. It's international in scope. It's not just an American phenomenon, it's international. And anybody that wants to investigate that, I think, has to take that fact into consideration. They're going to find a political grouping and a political motive here. But in my humble opinion, it's not in your good or mine at all. I don't know what it is, but we'll soon find out. I'm sure that if you follow the old advice, which is follow the money, you'll come to the answer sooner or later.
Follow the money right to the medical industry.
We all share the same need to get this information out there, to share with the public, to let people know what is being done. Ed felt so passionately about the issue, he offered to help us.
Well, the main thing now, since it looks like the budget is going to be met, is get it done well. We don't come off the tree knowing any answers at all.
Yeah, we're not scientists. We're just asking questions, exactly.
And we've got to be very skeptical about the answers. That's it's totally accurate, totally honest. Why can't people see this? They're not hearing it. They don't know. The facts are not being presented. We're very lucky, you know. Look at this opportunity that's been done with us. Opportunity.
This is it's going to be a battle. I know that.
Challenging a battle, but I mean, why are we here? It's not for that.
We need a short break with DJ.
Can't get hold of tomorrow, so it's going to be you for the moment. I'll call him again.
Sounds good.
I saw the sky crisscross with chemtrails, and I can't remember if it was in LA or I was on the road, but I had looked up one day and I thought, look at that. That's not the flight path, man. There was a grid, a regular grid over the city, and I couldn't believe my eyes.
Milky white clouds.
And, it all seems very obvious, and now the evidence of what we have on the ground with the aluminum, the barium, strontium, and with what we see in the patents and what the geoengineers say are going to happen, I mean, for the everyday Joe, this is a slam dunk.
This is a very delicate moment for the powers that be, because they're taking a covered-up operation like the tropospheric aerosol program, or Chemtrails, Project Icarus, whatever. It's had many names over the years. And they're making it over into a geoengineering scientific shield to deflect sunlight, because global warming's out of hand. So in this very moment, the belly of the beast is right above us with no armor. Whether people believe in chemtrails or not, the geoengineering should be scary enough. And when people learn about geoengineering, chemtrails will then become apparent, because they're the same.
I think you're talking about global conspiracy here.
Geoengineers propose doing this on a global level. On to Redding, California. If this is the second step after the AAAF meeting, we'll see what we find.
Right here in Northern California at Dana Wigington's house, he owns over 2,000 acres overlooking Lake Shasta. He told me about some of the challenges that they're having up here. Let's go and talk to Dane. We'll see, what's going on his property. We'll see what he's going through, and also what action he's taking based on the test results that he has.
I have a background in the energy fields. I worked in the first solar plants in the continental U.S. in the early 80s. My home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine, so this is my background. My goal has been to alert the public there is a mountain of toxic material falling on us, period. Before about 5 years ago, our skies were typically blue, and now you see it's covered with lines and haze, and virtually nothing you see on the horizon, nothing you see in the sky above us is a natural cloud. I mean, it is virtually all the remnants of these aircraft lines that you see fanning out, spreading into clouds, artificial clouds, but the sky is a very dirty look to it. There's not the white cloud blue sky that we had only a few years ago, but it looks like there's some sort of massive industrial activity or forest fires burning over there, and we see that typically every night. You see, even down to ground level, the clarity drops off significantly, and we don't see that except for the days when we have these long, lingering trails that spread and cover the whole sky, and on certain days you can see these trails actually dropping vertically like a veil. We assume the particulates are descending, and we have the test to prove that we are being inundated with levels of aluminum and particulates that are literally tens of thousands of times what would already be considered high. So we're not talking about exposure to a slight percentage higher of these toxic materials. We're talking about quantities, for example, off the side of Mount Shasta. If you can pan back, that's a landmark in Northern California, considered to be a pristine water source. Aluminum or snow sample off the side of Mount Shasta tested 61,000 parts per billion.
This is just ordinary snow water, and people are drinking this stuff when they're hiking on the mountain. And remember, government action is required at 1,000. This is 61 times over the government limit, and our hikers are drinking this poisonous water on Mount Shasta Mountain itself. Barium, 83. Strontium, 383.
So this summer, the people climbing are drinking poison.
Basically. I certainly wouldn't want to drink 61,000 micrograms per liter of aluminum.
And again, we've already seen in 5 years soil pHs in this area that have escalated 10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. Well, this is not speculation. We can prove conclusively that these metals have been in the rain. We have duplicate samples.
Bachelor of Science in Forestry, International School of Forestry at Missoula. Master's in Zoology, specialized in aquatics. 35 years with the U.S. Forest Service as a wildlife biologist. And
this is Francis Mangels, M-A-N-G-E-L-S. He's a U.S. Department of Agriculture biologist, talking about the aluminum and the barium that's in the water that you are drinking.
Before that, several years with the USDA Soil Conservation Service.
as a soil conservationist, also have run the botany programs, range and grazing programs, and I continue that today. Right now I do a lot of master gardener consultation work.
Well, I started this garden back in about 2005 or so. The pH here was 5.5, 5.6.
This is the old soil survey of the county. You can look at the page right here. This is my soil right here. It's a Dietz 125, 126 here at my house. And here, the soil reaction pH should be between 4.5 and 6.0. And over there in the pure mud, it's even a little darker. It's 6.8 right there.
And what can this do to plant life and ecosystems?
Well, you haul one of these things out and you start looking at the little things that are crawling around the soil. A lot of times they aren't there anymore. The little soil arthropods that you can barely see on a microscope, you can actually see movement with this. Little tiny macroscopic, look like little moving pieces of dust. Those start to go away. They're not gone entirely, but they start to go away.
This is black oak acorns. You know, this is pieces of cedar wood. You know, come on, folks. This should be very acid, and I'm getting 10 times higher than expected. There's something really wrong here.
You can see all those reports, lots of them.
Have over 20 reports here.
Well, at least 20. I'd say it'd be closer to 30.
All revealing dangerous amounts of aluminum and barium.
You know, the science is there that something funny is happening, and the naysayers say, well, so what? Isn't neutral good? Well, no, neutral's not good. Neutral is not good. If your soil is supposed to be 5.6, it should stay 5.6 if you want the forest to be healthy. And if you want to grow a good garden, you have to keep your pH around 6.0, 6.5.
I think that we just need to wake up and just look at what's happening, because we can't just ignore it, because it's going to get worse and worse if we just keep ignoring it and pushing it away like, oh, that's nothing. There was mason jars, and they were brand new, sterilized, and that's what we catch the rain in. And then there was a HEPA filter that we tested the air with.
Okay, so you caught rain, and then you basically filtered air. What did you find?
Aluminum and barium.
Here's another test that's revealing 375,000 parts per million aluminum.
375.
Barium at 3,090 and strontium at 345.
Yeah, that's from a lined pond
with EPDM fish-safe pond liner. There is no chemicals, manufactured materials at all in that pond liner that's available to the aquatic life. It's designed for that purpose. The well that feeds this pond has been tested and retested. Indeed, no detectable aluminum, zero. The only other place this pond can receive water is rainfall. We are located on a filtered, forested hilltop, miles and miles and miles away from any industry, highway, and so forth. After several heavy spray days, there was a film that we received formed on the surface of the water. So we tested that crust, and it was aluminum and barium. That after a year and a half's accumulation had 375,000 parts per billion of aluminum in it. It's literally toxic. We can say conclusively that what we see in the sky matches expressly what's outlined in numerous patents, and the materials on the ground match those patents. This material was not there 5 years ago. It is a recent phenomenon in the quantities it's in. It has escalated in some cases 50,000% in 5 years in the case of aluminum. From our original baseline reading of 7 parts per billion, which was already high, it has escalated up to 50,000% in 5 years. So we've seen profound changes in that time.
Dr. Leonard Tyne, PhD in chemistry, I cross-checked with him, and he says the oxides of aluminum, barium, and strontium will drive your pH into the coastal, from an acid soil like this up into the neutral. There's no question about it.
And that's exactly
what you see happening.
Wow.
I have a doctorate in inorganic chemistry from Oregon State University, in which I was working with different metals and oxidation states, and then did a postdoctorate work at Brandeis, where I was working stabilizing off-oxidation states of different metals. The goal is to sort of figure out how everything fits in the dynamic equilibrium of life. I was working with Francis up in Mount Shasta, and he showed me some rainwater analyses that had to do with levels of aluminum, strontium, and barium in the atmosphere. So I feel the major toxin in these chemtrails is the aluminum. And from the levels we were looking in at Mount Shasta, this is totally, totally unacceptable. When you get to metals and biological systems, you're no longer talking about the bulk aluminum that people think about when they're drinking from soda pop cans and that. So once it gets to the aluminum oxide stage, it just forms a plaque within your arteries and shuts down life. When you take elements that normally aren't out in the environment and you start putting them in the environment, it raises some serious red flags. Aluminum is a very specific, nasty, and biological systems. It takes that site and it never lets go, and it shuts down the site, and that's it. And so as you accumulate aluminum over time, it causes major neurological damage because it ends up as aluminum oxide that's essentially stuck in place and can't be flushed out by normal systems.
At the core of everyone's conditions is always some level of toxins. And aluminum is known to have cancer-causing effects. The half-life is decades. I think that we should be working on taking more of these toxins out of our environment instead of adding more toxins in. It's very concerning that if we add more toxins to our environment, that will...
Let's go back.
Can't be flushed.
Let's go back and listen to this lady
Elements
again.
that normally aren't out
You need
in
to
the
understand this,
environment,
folks.
you start putting them in the environment.
You think I'm a conspiracy theorist when I tell you they're trying to kill you, they're trying to create cancer, they're trying to dumb you down, they're trying to increase your risk of cancer? Listen to this. This woman is a
It raises some serious red flags. Aluminum is a very specific, nasty, and biological systems. It takes that site and it never lets go, and it shuts down the site, and that's it. And so as you accumulate aluminum over time, it causes major neurological damage because it ends up as aluminum oxide that's essentially stuck in place and can't be flushed out by normal systems.
At the core of everyone's conditions is always some level of toxins. And aluminum is known...
This is Dr. Tammy L. Bourne. Dr. Tammy L. Bourne.
To have cancer-causing effects. The half-life is decades. I think that we should be working on taking more of these toxins out of our environment instead of adding more toxins in. It's very concerning that if we add more toxins to our environment, that will be increasing the rates and risks of cancers. Even one patient is not worth it. So sad that they would consider putting aluminum in our environment to affect something when they could be causing so much more damage.
Wherever the material is coming from, it is there. The amount of metal falling on us cannot be disputed. Absolutely, this is not speculation. The amount of metal in the last 4 years, as I said, have increased to a degree of thousands of times, and California Air Quality Resources Board has studied the aerosols from China. These metals are not amongst them. Mike, the reason I've chosen to focus so primarily on this issue is I feel all other issues are secondary. What could be a greater priority than not being able to walk out your door and take in a breath of air without sucking up heavy metals? If our land base is being poisoned, if our waters are being toxified, what will we have left to work with? Whatever we choose to focus our time and energy on, whatever our political beliefs, that this is a common ground for all of us. We must have air that we can breathe that's not full of toxic chemicals and metals. We must have water that's not completely laden with whatever is being emitted from these aircraft. And if people stopped to consider that the atmosphere is as thin as a layer of paint on a basketball. It is an extremely thin layer that allows life to exist on this planet. To simply treat it as a physics lab and experiment with it until it is broken beyond repair is folly of unbelievable proportion. And if people understood that this sort of experimentation not only is going on, but has been going on for a very, very long time. Going back 50 years, there's been countless climate manipulation, weather modification programs that the vast majority of the public is completely unaware of. And if they think that this is not true, that certainly that somehow they would have known if it was occurring, I would ask them to look at things like Agent Orange and the things that governments do because they can, because there's no one to stop them, because they have these huge military machines that want to control everything. And in fact, the government's own document, perhaps you may have seen, it's available to any online, is called Owning the Weather, an express goal of our government, and not just our government.
He told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and control the rest.
Well, the New World Order will be able to starve Americans and control the rest. And this is an old friend of mine.
His weather control techniques. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War.
Well, we're going to do what we can. Let's see what we can do. You got the scientists behind you. The scientists are with you, so at least this scientist is with you. I may not have $1 billion budget, but I've got enough to show that something's really going wrong. You got it. All right.
So Arizona will be this Monday, the 21st. Senator Johnson up in Show Low. So we're going to be in the car for a long time. Well, it is such a pleasure to meet you.
My place back here, I'm telling you, Michael. But you know what? We love it. It's so private and it's so quiet and peaceful.
This is Karen Johnson, former Arizona State Senator.
My name is Karen Johnson. I served in the Arizona State Legislature for 12 years. I was in the House for 8 of those years and in the Senate for 4 of those years. When you see a plane fly overhead, there's a trail that leaves the end of that plane, and it goes from one horizon all the way to the other as the plane flies across, and it begins to filter out and cover more and more of the sky in kind of ripples. It widens out and fills the whole sky. I mean, how could anybody think that that was the case? And then to live and to be underneath that and know that whatever is in that is falling down upon you and upon your animals and upon the earth. And I mean, it's frightening to me. And if people don't start really waking up and facing the fact that we've got people that are doing terrible things to us, and we had better wake up and fight back now. I mean, I'm the mom of 11 kids. I've got 35 grandkids. I mean, I've got a stake in this. I care about what is going to be left for my children. I care about it, and I'm extremely worried about what is going to be left to them.
And this is what I am trying to accomplish with this show, with this magazine, with this website. There is a tremendous amount of resistance against me. They want to call me names. They want to try to distract. They want to try to tell you I'm anti-Semitic, I'm a racist, I'm anti-government. If this is what our government is doing to us, I am definitely anti-government. Now, I am alone doing this. These people, Michael Murphy And G. Edward Griffin had money from his book back when you could publish a book. I've got a book too, but nobody wants to publish it because I tell you and I identify some of the people that are responsible for this. This air quality, they mentioned Agent Orange. Agent Orange was created by Monsanto. Monsanto created the GMO modified foods. Monsanto has created the aluminum resistant plants. They want to be able to sell to the farmers after they kill off their original plants, their non-GMO plants, the non-GMO wheat or non-GMO corn. And remember, rats won't even eat the genetically modified corn that they want to sell you. This is a plot. This is a plan. Monsanto's behind it. Who are the owners? I don't know whether they're Germans or Jews. Maybe they're Jewish Germans. I don't know. But I know that they're the latter part of this film. And this film is up on my website. This one will be up on my website too. So you can just scroll up a little bit and get that. And listen to that. You'll see legislators, and when they approach these legislators, probably in the Capitol in California, or whether it's Washington, I don't know where their budget was. I don't know where they traveled. Maybe you can document it, but you can watch them run. They will run from the camera. I don't know anything about that. I can't look up. I can't see. We walk with our heads down, so we can't see the chemtrails. And then I can say truthfully, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the effect is. But those people are breathing our air too. There are answers in this issue of the Free American. We talk about the greenhouse farms. Now the greenhouse farms are protected. Maybe the water is filtered. Maybe they can remove most of this toxic aluminum along with the fluoride. And up on my Facebook site, which I'm going to put in bigger numbers there, I've also got links where they talk about the toxicity of aluminum, how they talk about the toxicity of fluoride, how that is leading to Alzheimer's. You got a bunch of old folks, probably younger than me, sitting around an old folks home, a nursing home, because they're sick or dying and they're being prescribed medicine after medicine after medicine. The doctors are your drug dealers. That's why I'm not a fan of medical marijuana, because of what they are trying to do is make money off a plant that God gave you, and at the same time they're trying to destroy. And they try to do that with our fields of marijuana too. Remember, they used paraquat on it. Now they're spraying all of your food with aluminum. What in the hell do you think is going on? You think they're doing this for your own benefit? And they don't want you listening to me. They don't want you telling your friends about me. They don't want, because I've had people like Keith Broder's on. I've had people on, like my guest earlier today, that talked about doing things in the county, taking back your county. Now, everybody does have their own issue. Everybody has their own agenda. I cover them all. I talk to everybody. There are some people that believe it's the Germans. I have them on. There are some people that believe it's the Jesuits. I have them on. Some people believe it's the Jews. I believe it's all of them. I believe America's been dumbed down. They've been infiltrated so much. And they can do that because they've got the money. They don't want me to have the money. They don't want you investing in me. They don't want you donating to me. They don't want you buying my books. They don't want you reading about the research that I've been doing for almost 50 years, folks. And I've done all of this by myself. If I had a team behind me, if I had the help, if I had the investors, if I had the people that know the internet better than I do, I would be making these films. I would be producing these films. And I have helped with all of these films. I helped Anthony Hilder do his film on the chemtrails. I even went and provided you film of the airplanes that were spraying right from the airport where I investigated up in Tucson. Folks, I have been there, I'm doing this, and now I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for your help. Thank you. God bless you.
Mainstream media won't tell you. Are you frustrated with your elected politicians? Get the news behind the news at truthradio.gov. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs on demand. Listen when you want to. Truthradio.gov. The truth is out there. All you have to do is open your mind and listen.
FreeAmerican.com.
Greetings, world. We are anonymous.